Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all having a good day today, whether it's morning for you or evening or you're watching this on a playback. I want to thank you very much for joining me here to review and build our first PSR modular software station. So before we start, I want to introduce myself. I will bring myself on the screen. So my name is Zachary Stank. I am the product manager for control, safety, and IO products here at Phoenix Contact USA. The way today will work is I will do a brief introduction of the PSR modular software, and then we will go through building up how the software works, how to build your first platform, and then I have a demo reel here that I built. There we go. That I will show off and connect, and then hopefully run live for you as well. So you can see I'm using a PSR modular B1 base module, an S12 input for safety mats, but I'm just using that as a generic input, and then a Profinet gateway. So hopefully everybody can hear me all right. There is a 30-second delay from when I'm talking to what you're seeing. So if at any time you have any questions, please use the Q&A box. I will try to answer questions as we go. If I don't answer your questions, it doesn't mean that I didn't get to you. I'm probably just focused on what I'm doing, and then I will go to Q&A at the end to cover anything that I might have missed. So the other thing is, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it. Hopefully you've registered for other webinars. If you haven't, I'll put a link as an announcement here in a few minutes for our US webinars webpage. That's phoenixcontact.com/us.webinars. Let me type that in. Phoenix Contact, Phoenix/US-webinars. All right, so that is in the announcements now. If you want to see anything that we've done previously, you can go to that web landing page, register for anything that's already happened. It'll send you a link, and then you can just use that link to watch it again, or you can schedule for new ones. We're going to be launching some new ones coming up here for Q2 and Q3, so keep an eye on that web page for things to come. All right, enough of me on the screen, because I know that's not why you guys are here. So I am going to start sharing my screen so you can see the PSR modular software. So I will send that. Excellent. So the PSR modular, what is it? What does it do? It is a configurable safety relay. So what that means is that you can configure the safety relay with simple software. And I'm just showing an example module here that I have laying as a loose part. This is the main module, or the master module, if you will. This is the module that you can program. It has a USB mini connection on the front. Open that up, you can see the USB mini connection. So just standard USB to USB mini to get it to your laptop. This base module comes with 8 inputs, and depending on which base module you pick, it either has 2 redundant outputs or 2 redundant outputs that can be changed to 4 individual outputs. They're all OSSD outputs, so this one 22.5mm module will get you 8 and at least 4 or 2 redundant. So you can start with that. So if you don't know anything else, you just have a part you're trying to start, I will guide you through here, and I'm going to take my face off the screen in case I want to show something. That way you can get a full screen experience here. So the first thing we do is come up to the new. So a new project, it gives you an opportunity to name it, put your company in, put your username in. For this example, I'm just going to use user is zstank, and we'll call this one, let's call it live demo 0209 2021. Hit OK. So the first thing it brings up as soon as I give it a name is my configuration. So the first thing you need to do is to figure out what base module you have. There's 2 versions that we have currently. There's the B1 module and the B2 module. There's a slight difference between the two. Again, the B1 module allows you to do 8 inputs and 2 redundant outputs. So that means you get 4 outputs, but that 2 of them are redundant with each other. So it's a total of 2 outputs that are redundant. The B2 module allows for 8 inputs, but you get to take those outputs and you can split them into individual. So you can do 4 individual outputs, or you can do 2 redundant outputs on it. There's also a limitation to the number of modules you can connect. So if I go down here, the modules that I can connect, you can see on the B2, I have all of the modules available for me to select from. I can connect any of our extension modules, input, output, analog inputs here, any of the speed control monitors or the standstill monitors that we have in any gateway. With the B1 module, we actually lose a couple of those, so you cannot connect the EF1. The EF1 works just like the B2, where you can configure those outputs to be redundant, 2 redundant, or 4 individual. And we also lose the connection of the analog input. So analog is only available on the B2 module. It has some expanded memory capabilities, so that's why that's possible. For the demo I'm working with today, I'm using a B1 module, so I'll keep B1 selected. And then the connection I have is for the EF3 SDI12. And then the other module that I had connected, what I showed you at the beginning, again, was a gateway module. And I am using Profinet today. I will not be connecting it to Profinet or a controller or anything like that, but I will be showing you the software that we use to make those connections. And then we're done. So you can add up more modules. It tells you how many allocated inputs, usable inputs you have, how many outputs you have. And this over here is for the T-bus. So if I want to take this from one cabinet to another, I can add in T-bus modules that basically take the backplane, extend it. You can go up to 50 meters from the base module and have another module sitting in a different cabinet. So I'll just hit OK because this is my setup. Hit OK. And there, I'm ready to start configuring. So one of the places that people get confused is just a blank screen. I'm not a programmer. I don't know how to do this. I've never done safety programming before. You know, sometimes people get a little scared when we say safety. The one benefit of using a configurable safety relay like this is everything is already predetermined for you in these nice function blocks. So all you have to do is go and check which one you want to use, what type of module you want to use, whether it's a light curtain. ESPE stands for electrosensitive protective equipment, meaning that it could be a light curtain or a laser scanner, or it could be a photo eye or something like that. You have e-stops, you have different types of guard monitoring that you can do. And at any time, if you have a new module that you're using, or you're using something that you don't understand and you need help on it, the nice thing is the help file here is built into the software. So you don't need to be connected to the internet. And anytime you're using it, I can just right click on a function block, go to help, and then it brings up the help file, which will then show me everything I'm working with. So it gives me input, output information. It gives me a definition of what the light grid here is. It gives me an example of connecting, how it works, and then talks about some of the options that we can use. So let's take a look at what we got. So I'm not using any ESPE today. I am using an e-stop. So here's my e-stop. One thing, and this is for those that are a little OCD, I snap to grid. So there's a snap to grid option here. I just like that it makes everything nice and even. So I turn on my snap to grid option using this right here. So for my e-stop, I know that my e-stop is 2 channels. I want to use it 2 channels, which means I have 2 inputs I'm going to use. To change this to a 2-channel e-stop, I go over, I click on the e-stop, I go over to the input type, and it's double normally closed, right? Which automatically populates the input there. So then I need to determine which module I'm going to use. So I'm going to use the input module here. I can click on this, and I'm just going to use the first input on my base module. So when I hit input 1 B1, it automatically populates on the screen input 1 and input 2 right next to it, the concurrent input next to it. So I'll move this out a little bit so you can see it. Not only does it take the next input available, it tells me where it's connected. So P17, P18, let's see if I can get this on the screen for you real quick. So give me 1 second. I'll show my picture live. So P17, P18 is in relationship to the points at the top. So you can see P17, P18 is right here, sorry, 17 and 18. It already tells me where I need to connect to the module and where my inputs will be connected. So that's really nice to have when I'm developing this. It tells me where things are connected, and then I have the option to add comments if I want to. So if I put in an item description here, let's say this is, we're using a wiring diagram, so we call it ES-001-01. I don't know the naming conventions you might use, but then I would use ES-001-02, right? And the nice part about this is if I'm using that naming convention and I have a larger section here, I can hit Control F. So Control F will bring up Find, and I can go to ES, and it'll find all of the ES variants in here. So if I have multiple pages of things, or if I'm looking at a drawing and I need to know where that wire is connected, I can search a specific wire connection as long as I've labeled it. It'll automatically search the fields and find what I'm talking about. So I've added my inputs. The other thing that you can do here is you can make them monitored inputs. So I can have a test pulse coming off of the base unit and bring that up into the e-stop and then resolve it back at the input. To do that, I would go into the test output test here, and I'll select B1 test 1, B1 test 2 for this. And you can see here the other thing that it does is it automatically tells me where the test pulse is coming from. So again, just selecting some options, this software will take you through where things to be connected, how they should be connected, and it makes it very easy to follow along while you're doing it. So now I've decided I don't have a reset button on this. If I did, I could put a manual reset here for the specific e-stop block, but I'm not using a manual reset. I actually just have it automatically selected so that anytime I hit my e-stop, as soon as I pull the e-stop back out, this will automatically reset and engage my outputs. So now I have to add in my outputs. So I'm in my input piece here. I'll find my outputs. And you can see here there are two different types. So there's dual output, right? So dual output comes right in. It has two separate outputs that I can use. And then there's single dual output. So if I drag that in, it's going to give me an error. And the reason it gives me an error is because remember I said at the beginning, I'm using a B1 module here. The B1 module only allows you to do dual output configuration. You can't do single or dual. You have to do the dual output. This specific output here is designed to be on that B2 module or the EF1 extension module. So you can't use this one. There's physically no pins for you to assign to it. So I will delete that. Again, when I click in here, I can change my outputs to have the reset. So if I'm using multiple types of inputs and ANDing them together and I want to make the outputs to have a reset, I can click on this, make a manual reset for my output, right? I can have an enable monitoring output, so a status of this. If I wanted to send a status bit out, which I'm going to leave that on there. And then a K time monitor, so external K delay. So this means that if I have a external relay, I would feed back the normally closed contacts of that contactor back into my my input here. So basically externally monitoring my contactors, making sure this is working. That's required for a performance level E usually system. You can get away with it sometimes if you're using really high quality components, typically, sorry, Munson a bit there. Typically, if you need to get category 4, you're going to need to monitor those external outputs. That's what that would be. I don't have this set up on my demo, so I'm not going to have that set up there. But I am going to use this status bit a little bit later, so I'll leave that open. So now I can pick my outputs. So I go to my outputs. I select output 01A, and just like before, because this is a dual output and the dual output works together and they function together, I can't split them. As soon as I pick 01A as the B1 connection, it automatically populates the 01B for B1. And again, it gives me the actual output connection to make. So this is telling me terminal P5 and terminal P6 will be my outputs. So when I'm wiring this, I'm going back and I have an engineering document. I can actually see what's going on, label these, make sure they're right. So I'll add item descriptions for this. So we'll just call this, so out 001, channel 1, and we'll call this out channel 2. There we go. Again, your naming convention can differ from this. I'm just showing you some examples of how this would work. So now that I have my input set up and my output set up, I go to the output block here, and you see how my cursor turned from a pointer to kind of a crosshair here. I can connect this, then drag it to my input, and I now have a e-stop with 2 inputs being directly connected to an output with redundant outputs on it. And just like that, I'm done creating an e-stop. If I hadn't been talking this whole time, we probably could have made something really nice in a really quick amount of time. You could get through this maybe in 2 minutes or so, and then spend the rest of your time wiring up the outputs. The other thing I haven't wired up here is my status bit. And the other thing I meant to show here is I have this Profinet gateway on my module, so I can use this EQ output here. EQ stands for an output. Q is the standard for an output, and then this will be my external output. So I can use this bit, and you can see here this EQ just as generic, and it allows me to select a bit to be out. So I'm going to select bit 0 because this is my first one, but this allows you to assign specific bits being communicated back through Profinet on my Profinet gateway that my controller can then use as a status bit. So if I'm turning on a light or I'm turning on something with my standard controller, or if I want a horn to go off when something happens or I engage the outputs, I can use this as the bit to do that. And I can do that through my standard controller. I don't need to do that here in the safety program because it's just a status bit. It's a non-safe output, but I can get that back through my standard Profinet data. And you have on the B1, you're allowed to connect up to 16 bits of this on the output side. B1 also allows you to connect 8 of the input bits. So if I bring this in, so that's an input here. I get 8 inputs bits that I can use. If I were to change this to a B2 system, again, B2 has some more memory capabilities. It allows me to connect up to 32 bits of input, non-safe input through the gateway, and then 32 bits of output through the non-safe gateway. So these freely assignable tags, they can be put anywhere. So if you want to monitor a specific signal, if you want to monitor a specific output, you can tie these anywhere you want in your system. So just like that, I have my setup here. I would go then to my validate. So this will validate to make sure that my logic works out. Click on the validation. It moves fairly quickly. And the first thing it brings up is the schematic CRC code. So this is important to me when I ship this out to a customer or I'm developing for a customer. I want to make sure I record the CRC code that I sent with it to validate to make sure that nobody's made any changes. Once it's programmed and on the controller, I won't be making any changes because it's password protected. The default password, by the way, is in the manual, so you can look that up. And we always recommend changing your password when you get it out into the field so no one can just get into it. The other thing that it shows is how many input blocks I've used, so a percentage of my input and also the actual number. And it tells me how many dual outputs I'm using on this and how many monitoring outputs. The monitoring outputs here are specifically monitoring outputs from the base unit. So it's showing 0% even though I'm using a gateway monitoring here. I can just select OK, and then I'm completely done. This system is ready to be downloaded and validated and used. So I will set that up right now. And as I'm doing that, I will also show the simulation. So there's 2 different types of simulation that we can use on the software. Again, the PSR modular software comes with this already installed. So there's no separate packaging or anything that you need to use to get this installed. I would just need to click on the schematic simulation. So So again, this is reminding you that it's only as an aid to the design. It is not meant to be the validation of the safety equipment. You should be doing that as you're working with the safety equipment. I hit OK. Then it gives me a real simple function block here. I really only have one thing that I can validate, and that's this e-stop. When I hit my e-stop, that means 2 channels are OK. The output turns on. It turns on both of the outputs to my my contactors, and then my EQ going to Profinet also turns back on. So turn it off. Real simple. This gets nice if you have a lot of information you're validating. You want to test your and/or logic. Maybe you have some other things that you built into your software here. You can really get down and dirty quickly in showing how this connects and how different safety applications relate to one another. Again, it's just an example of how you can use it. The other dynamic simulation that we have here is time-based. I'm not going to go through that today. That's a more it's a more power user type of example. This allows you to go through and make timestamps and have different things come on and come off, and it'll actually show you the time sequence diagram once you're done. This is also covered in your manual, so if you want to do this type of thing, I'll probably have another video or live webinar that we're going to use to go over that. But just know for right now, you can get pretty advanced on how this works. So I'll check one more time. Okay. Then I will turn on my system here. So I will go back to you seeing me. All right, so I have my USB mini here, plugging it right into the front of my demo. All right, it's connecting up. And you can see I'm connected here live to the station. Let me go back live so you can see here. All righty, so send live. I've connected, now I downloaded it. So I'm downloaded to my station. It already gave me the confirmation. I apologize, I did not switch fast enough, but confirmation is already done. I just need to swap out, disconnect, and now I can go in. Sorry for switching back and forth so quickly here. I missed that last one. I'll run it again live. But now I'm connected. I hit a reset, and I'm going live with our e-stop that we have here. So when I hit my e-stop, you can see the LEDs will turn off. Try to get this centered for everybody. So you can see I hit my e-stop. E-stop comes off, LEDs go off, pop it back out, the inputs go back on, I'm ready to go. The other thing I'll show you is because this is setting up the inputs and how they're working, if I disconnect one of the inputs, so I'll try to do this on screen without making a mess of things. It's really nice because these are push-in terminals here. So I disconnected one of the inputs from the e-stop. You can see now I'm getting an error. The 2 LEDs are flashing, letting me know my inputs are not working properly. And I can go ahead, figure out where the input is. I hit my e-stop, bring it back out. Still having the same problem. Oh, okay, I need to add my terminal back in. This is push in, but I want to make sure I'm not sparking anything. I pushed it back in, easy peasy. Now, still has the error. I need to clear that error. They need to go together. As soon as they go together, I get my input to go back on. So very simple, easy to read diagnostics up front. It allows me to see what I'm doing and how to do it. It's also replicated in the software as well. So I could see a live view of that as I'm going through. So I'm going to go back to my desktop. The other thing I wanted to show was setting up the gateway. So the gateway is installed. When you install our software, you get this busconf, PSR busconf software, which allows you to configure your gateway. So I will connect into that, again, using the same cable. I guess you guys can't see me on the screen again. I'll just make myself real small to the corner so I'm not taking up the whole screen. So you can see I'm using the same cable. I just pulled it out of my my B1 module here. I connect into the gateway, so let's connect in that way. Give it a second. I click on connect. It connects in. I can set IP addresses, right? It also gives me the status of what's going on here. So if I hit my e-stop, it gives me a status bit there that goes off, comes back on. So showing you again, hit my e-stop, the input state goes off, output state goes off, pop it back out. The other nice thing here is if I'm just viewing this, I'll pop my cable out again. Do that. So as soon as I popped out that input, you can see on the screen, it gave me missing simultaneity, meaning that the inputs aren't there together, which is something that I required on my input. My input state is at 0. My output state is at 0 here. So once I put that back in, he says confidently, there we go. Put that back in. Now that code changed to input not restored. So as soon as I hit my e-stop, clears the error, pop it back out, everything works the same. Again, this is really simple, a splash screen here. So if you have easy diagnostics you want to run, you can go right into the communication module to do that. This also gets sent back to your controller via Profinet here. So you get all of these states here. If I was using analog, I could use my analog data, and I also get my diagnostics on the screen. So easy stuff in terms of the gateway module. So close that out. I wanted to go through a couple other more advanced features. So before I go there, I'll see if there's any questions. I see a question here. I think this is about the B2 module. Give me a second. So with the B2 variant, can a user configure the 4 safe output points as 1 redundant output and 2 individual outputs, or can the output only be configured as A, 2 redundant, or B, 2 individual? That's it, or 4 individual. That's a very good question. So that's something I'll show you here. We can just change out our input. So let me double click on here. I'm going to switch this to a B2 module now. Hit OK. Right. Let me get rid of my output. And what I'll do is we'll go to the output. So I get single dual is what I would use. So I have single dual, which allows me to use 4 individual outputs. So when I click on this, I can use 1, 2, 3, or 4. Or if I go to single dual and I click on this, I have an output type set as double, right? So if I use double, that sets it as 2, right? And then I can use my output. So if I select 3, it automatically populates 4. For this single, it would be 1, and then I would get another single here that I could use. And now I'm running into myself, sorry. I can use another output here, which is the only one left is 2. So it could be 4 individual, it could be 1 dual, 2 individual, it could be 2 dual. But this is how I would set that up. So it's a really good question there. Thank you very much for that question. So I will just leave this. Get these off the screen, show an example. One of the other things that I wanted to show out here was some of the logic that we have. So there's your typical OR, XOR, AND, NOT. And again, I'll try to make this full screen so you're not just staring at my face the whole time. OR, XOR, AND, NOR, XNOR, typical things you would have in here. But one that is really neat is this logical macro. So sometimes people will use multiple inputs. They have a lot of different inputs they're working with. They need those inputs to be working AND or OR together. Let's make some space. This allows you to AND and OR separate pieces, or if I have 2 sides of a machine and I want them to be ANDed separately and then to have their outputs come out, I can do that. So for example, let's say I have 3 e-stops, okay? 3 e-stops going in here. 1 more e-stop. Right. So they're both double. You can see how quickly I'm getting through this. So input, input. So there, I've got these set up. I'm not going to keep these together. And now I want the e-stops to AND together so that if any of the e-stops in my system are hit, I can AND them, right? And I can go through and make sure that these need to be ANDed. So if anybody's doing anything, right, any of these e-stops are hit, it's going to turn off an output is what I want, right? And then let's say I have another setup, and this is just an example, so don't take this as safety approved or anything like that, but maybe I have a safety mat and I also have a, let's say it's a ESPE equipment here. So I will line these up because it's making me mad. All right, so I have these, and these are separate pieces here too, okay? So the output of these actually needs to be OR, so one of them needs to be true. So I have 3 ands, that's the e-stops. My OR is going to be, actually this makes it more sense like this, sorry. So, and these, the ESPE and the safety mat are OR'd together, so I use the last ones there. Luckily, I picked safety mat as one of my connections here, so now I have a safety mat and the light curtain that are going to be OR'd together. And what happens is, the way this the logic works is, as long as these e-stops are connected and either of these is okay, and both of these blocks are satisfied, I will get an output. So let's get my output in here. Put rid of my, there we go, single dual output. I'm going to connect that in, right? Single dual output. We're going to make it a dual output from the output side. Sorry if I'm driving too fast for everybody. You should be able to capture some of this or go back and watch the replay. So now I have a logical macro in here saying e-stops will turn off this output no matter what. Either one of these needs to be active. As long as that's the case, that'll also make sure that this is running properly. Sorry. The other thing I can do here is I can actually take specific outputs. So if this is only one section of my system, say I have a loading zone where I need to make sure this is all okay, and then I have maybe a robot zone where, you know, any e-stop should turn it off regardless of the function. I can go into my macro here and do an enable output 1, basically saying that I can tie the e-stops to their own output as well as this specific output. So now I have another single dual. This is going to be for robot motion, just as an example. Now any of those e-stops that I hit will turn off this specific output. And oops, I want it dual. So now I have this logical macro. The real nice part about this is it's very, very flexible. Typically with a software package like this, I've seen people make their own cascading ands and ors. And if you start doing that, it can go all over the place. You can bring them in if you want. This is absolutely fine. You can bring in ands and ors. You can change how many inputs and outputs you need on them individually. But this block right here, this logical macro block, really makes it simple, really makes it self-explanatory. And when I'm looking at it, you get so many configurations. I can add up to 7 different inputs in here, so that when I go to 6, it's gonna basically tell me I can't do that anymore. So I can keep this however I want. I can tie them all together. I can make inputs and outputs work separately. It's just a really nice function. And then I can go in here, validate it, and I can test it for everybody. Oh, the safety mat requires a test. So good thing. That was intentional, I guess, to show you that I need a test in here. So I'm selecting a test in for both of these. They have to be sequential, and then I can check it again. Now I'm good to go. So it does error out when you do something you're not supposed to do. It shows me how many outputs I'm using, the total number of blocks that I'm using for the system, and then how many inputs I'm using on the system as well. So now that I've done that, I can just do a simple test. Okay, all of my e-stops are okay. You can see since my e-stops are okay, it enables this to be there. Once one of these goes okay, you know, my light curtain's okay, someone might be on the safety mat somewhere else. It still allows an output. Once someone gets out of that, they need to be stepping on the safety mat in order for that to be enabled. If one of those doesn't work because it's an OR, that means that it's going to drop out that output. Then again, if it's still working, somebody hits one of these e-stops, it turns off all of my e-stop. It turns off all the outputs that I have. So real simple functionality here, but it's powerful and it's really clean user interface. It happens and shows up really nice on this. You can add in more information if you have, you can add comments in here. I can show allocated resources. So if I'm working through this and I want a more bitwise look at what I'm doing, it shows me how many inputs and outputs I have in my system based on my visual configuration at the bottom. So if I add more inputs and outputs, these will allow me to have more. I can add in more EI and EQ, so my external inputs and outputs, if I want to do that. The show print area and print the schematic. So I think print schematic, oh, I have to do this, sorry. Show print area first. So once I do this, I hit show print area and, oh no. Okay, so now this is showing me where things are going to be printing from, meaning that it's going to cut right in the middle of this, so I can move things around to make sure I want it to be a little bit better. I can move that around, and then I can show my print preview, which will show me how this is going to look when I do it. So let me zoom in, he says confidently. I think yep. I think my Teams is stalling out on me. I apologize, everybody, but this is how you would get the schematic of what you've tied in. And it'll show you how everything works on that. So I went over pretty much the basics of what you have. There's definitely way more powerful things in here. Again, if you're using this and you're working together with an engineering team and you need to show some things, it's really easy to show a schematic simulation showing how things are working here. I can get really advanced, go through a time sequencing, so manage a startup, things like that. If I'm labeling according to my drawing, it makes it really easy to find specific wires and how they work, because I can just hit Control F and go through and make sure everything's okay. The other thing is, I have a question in here. Can you connect multiple master modules together? Yeah, so that's a good question. Yes, you can. So that is, let me find that in here. That is, oh, it's up here. I'm sorry. So that's what this network in is. So the network in piece here shows you essentially, you would think it's a network connection. So if I'm connected to my Profinet gateway, this gives me an output. That's not what this is. Essentially, this is a way, if you go to help, it'll show you. It's a way for me to create a network of these B1, B2 modules. So I could have, a line e-stop that shuts down multiple cabinets worth of things. And it also allows me to add filter time to this input. So basically, if I have several cabinets on, say, a conveyor line, and I want each of them to shut down on an e-stop, right? And there's a main cabinet, that e-stop needs to go to other different cabinets. I can bring that in here with this. So if I set it, we'll make it redundant for a single double. So I tag that in, I bring it into 3 and 4. Oh, I have to, that's right. So one thing I forgot is it makes you do it to a base module. So it's good that it reminded me here. So I'm going to change these ones over. I know. So now it's telling me I'm not using the same input output. Give me a second here. Take those out. Bring them back in. There we go. So now it's happy with those. These have to be on a base module, right? So I bring it in on my base module, and now I can configure a filter delay up to 250 milliseconds, basically saying that I'll be okay with disruption in this up to 250 milliseconds. And that's good if I have a large line of things. I want to make sure that an e-stop at any of these will shut things off. I can do this network type of e-stop. So that's a good question. So real simple. I try not to go too deep today. It's been about 40 minutes. So if there's any other Q&A or any other questions that people have, please don't hesitate to ask them in here. But just as a wrap up, phoenixcontact.com/PSR modular. That will take you to the landing page, give you more information about the system, show you how things work, give you some information on how it connects. Talks about the base modules, different types of inputs and outputs. Again, we have general safe expansion modules for input or output type of things. There's safe motion. There's safe analog now that you can do in here. It covers a wide variety of different gateways to connect to different control options. So a really simple yet effective way to control safety on your system. It can communicate back up to your main controller so you can make some things go in and out with it. And it also is really simple to use, but it can be very powerful, as I just showed you right here. If you have more questions about this, you can feel free to email me. It's zstank@phoenixcontact.com. I can ask or answer any of your questions you may have been afraid to ask here. Also, get in contact with any of your local salespeople, your ISEs, ESEs, ASEs here in the United States. They'd be more than happy to walk you through a demo, get you some of these to play with. Maybe you have a system that you want to work with. It's easy, it's expandable, it's low cost. So it's a really good solution looking for safety in the future. So I want to thank everybody for joining me today. Again, zstank@phoenixcontact.com. Any questions, you can go there or send me an email. I'll try to get back to you quickly. I might bring in your local resource if it's something that I think can be handled there locally, or I can get on a phone call or a Teams chat to show you something that you want to see. And then I also want to recommend, if this is your first webinar you've been to for Phoenix Contact USA, if you go to phoenixcontact.com/US-webinars, you can view any of our previously run webinars, so including this one. You know, someone in your company would be willing to look at it, someone that it's a problem solver, or you have a customer out there that you think would be interested in something like this. You can just share that link, the US-webinars. They can register for any one that they want to see, and then the link that they get in their email box will basically be a replay of what we just did here. So I want to thank you all for your time. I really appreciate you and your attentiveness. Thank you very much for the good questions, and I hope you all have a safe rest of the day. Thank you.